The draft is 3 days away, and I'm going to be doing a full 7-round mock draft in today's video. It's going to be a combination of what I think the Chargers are going to do as well as what I would do. So make sure to like and subscribe if you do enjoy this content. It helps me out so much. And let's start out with this first round pick. Now, I think a trade down at 5 is still an option at this point, but I have a feeling with the way Joe Hortiz was talking last week and with what he says he likes in a wide receiver, he's comfortable with taking that pick at 5, and I think it's going to be Malik Nabers. He's the most explosive and athletic wide receiver, not only in this draft, but that I have seen in college football for a while. His releases from the slot, specifically when he is running a fade route, are just nasty, and he consistently beats DBs on that route even when they know it's coming. He ran a 4.340 and was jumping out of the gym at the LSU Pro Days, and those testing numbers, they track with his film because he just moves differently than everyone else. He is 6 foot, over 200 pounds, so he has the size that you want with the crazy athleticism that teams love. But not only that, he was the highest graded wide receiver by PFF in offensive and receiving grade. So he's not just a freak show, but he plays freaking football really well too. His route running, it got so much better if you watch that 2022 tape against the 2023 tape. He is so much more decisive and those routes are so much crisper, which is a great combination to have. A crazy, explosive, and fast wide receiver that can run clean routes. And that is the reason that out of his 86 catches, not including the bowl game, 43 of those went for 15 or more yards. That is an absurd number, and that literally means that half of his catches went for explosive plays. And on top of that, 70 of those catches went for first downs. That means every single time he catches the ball, there's a 50-50 chance it's going to be an explosive play, whether that be because he's running away from a defender on a deep ball because they can't keep up with that speed, or because he caught the ball over the middle and he uses his yak ability to make guys miss and just run through freaking defenders as well, because he's physical too. And don't think that he can't be physical. I saw plenty of times where Jayden Daniels was running down the field. Malik Nabers was more than willing to throw a block and get his hands dirty. He also showed the ability to get open downfield when Jayden Daniels was scrambling and looking downfield for a target, even though Jayden Daniels, he rarely did that. And he played about half of his snaps in the slot last year and 46% out wide. And, some people have been in my comment section even saying this, that he can't play on the outside and that's why he played in the slot. I don't think that's the case. I think he struggled with physicality and hand fighting at the line of scrimmage at times, and that is why LSU put him in the slot about half the time this past season. I think you can coach that out of him because he has shown the physicality in other areas of his game. So I think the hand fighting at the line of scrimmage and struggling with really, really physical cornerbacks at the college football level, you can coach it out of his game. And also, college football cornerbacks are a lot more physical because they can get away with it. You got to keep in mind, NFL cornerbacks are not going to be able to get away with being that physical with a guy like this. And his other issue is dropping the ball. But listen, man, this is a guy that nobody had an answer for last year and everyone was trying to stop. He moves different. His route running took a huge step last year, which means he is still improving and coachable. He is dangerous after the catch. He can block in the run game and when his quarterback improvises. He's going to be 21 once training camp begins. This is a home run pick. There's no other way to slice it, and I think Joe Hortiz knows that. I wouldn't be surprised if he has Malik Nabers number 1 on his board entirely, and I think barring a trade down, Malik Nabers is going to be the guy. And in the second round, I have Mike Sainristil. This is a 5'9" cornerback that converted from wide receiver in 2022, so he has the ball skills to not just bat balls down, but bring them down for interceptions. His vision and instincts as a slot cornerback, they are so good, and you can see by the way he runs and covers wide receivers sometimes that he is a former wide receiver. I mean, I have seen him literally run better routes than the wide receivers that he's covering, and also his ability to track the ball while it's in the air, it's very high level. The size, though, that is a concern, especially considering that the Chargers are in desperate need of a cornerback that is big enough to play on the boundary, not a 5'9" nickel cornerback. So why would we draft a guy that can't play on the outside? Well, I think the Chargers might think Mike Sainristil is the outlier, not in terms of you can play him on the boundary because they actually struggled at that in Michigan this past season, but in terms of he's just too good of a football player to pass up. Jesse Minter utilized him so well in that Michigan defense with blitzes off the edge, and Mikey was so good at disguising what he was doing, and he was very successful rushing the passer. He's got a really high football IQ. He's got a great feel for zone coverage. He comes downfield fast and physical. I mean, just because he's smaller doesn't mean that he can't tackle and he can't be physical. He absolutely can. You could play him even in the box. You can play him as a free safety. He only played the position for 2 years, but he has such a high freaking football IQ. He's fast. He has lateral agility. He's physical as well, even though he doesn't have the size. I think the Chargers see him as too good of a player to pass up, and they take best player available. Look what Joe Hortiz did, drafting Ladarius Webb with the Ravens, another undersized cornerback that was best player available on their board. So he has done it before. I don't think this would sit well with a lot of fans because this is a little bit of a reach, but Jesse Minter and Jim Harbaugh get their guy. I wouldn't be upset with this at all. This is one pick, one guy that I have full confidence in playing well for the next like 8 to 10 years. Now, as we go into the third round, I have Junior Colson. Sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not. I think if he's there, he is the pick. 6'2", 240 linebacker, moves really well, and this is exactly what you want in a linebacker when it comes to physicality. He can cover too. He has the lateral agility to move with linebackers and tight ends over the middle of the field, but he is also so quick to recognize play action. He also gets depth in his zone really fast, really smoothly. He's a fluid mover. He's got fluid hips, and he can work through traffic as a run defender well, while also being a pretty consistent tackler. He only had 5 missed tackles last year and had an elite tackle grade by PFF. He was a 3-year starter at Michigan, only recently just started playing football because he was a soccer player from Haiti. He started as soon as he set foot on that Michigan campus as a true freshman. This is a Jim Harbaugh guy through and through. He's resilient. He's dedicated to the game. He has a high football IQ already with a great feel for zone coverage, has great instincts to read and react to what's happening on the field, which is crazy because he just started playing football a couple years ago. I think if Junior Colson is here, Chargers take him in round 3 100%, and they might even be tempted to take him in the 2nd round. Now, our first 4th round pick, the Keenan Allen pick, it's going to be Cade Stover, the tight end from Ohio State. He is 6'4", 250 pounds. He converted from linebacker, which is funny because he's actually a pretty good pass catcher. He only had 2 drops and 108 targets, and he had no drops this past year with 51 targets. And he also had an elite drop grade by PFF, which means he is elite at not dropping the ball. He runs through tacklers and has kind of average athleticism, but he wins on the football field with freaking physicality. Ohio State used him as an inline and slot tight end a lot, but he did line up out wide on 27 snaps, so he has positional versatility. But the most important thing we need to know is, can he block? Yes, he absolutely can. I mean, this is a freaking former linebacker. He even played defensive line a little bit at Ohio State. It's funny because the way I imagined this going down is Cade Stover was just like a linebacker. They threw the ball to him. He caught it with one hand or something, and then they just moved him to tight end. Cade Stover doesn't really run a full route tree. He's not a great, crisp route runner, but he is nuanced in route running. Think of like kind of Antonio Gates, very, very light. Not as good as Antonio Gates as a route runner, obviously, but he has a little nuance like he did. He's not really fast. He's not really quick either, but he does have some good route running ability. And also in his run blocking, sometimes he tends to get his head into the defender a little bit too much, and he lunges his way into him, gets him in trouble. He can, get off of his feet and fly around the defender. If they're really good in the fundamentals, then they can just throw him around sometimes. But that doesn't happen often. I actually think Cade Stover has a very high floor as a tight end because he is a nuanced route runner. He has a high football IQ, and he would fit perfectly with Greg Roman as long as Jim Harbaugh isn't too mad that we pick an Ohio State player. Next 4th round pick, Beaux Limmer, 6'4", 300-pound center from Arkansas. He played right guard in 2022, so he's got that positional versatility. High football IQ and pass protection, so he can pick up a stunt move and blitzes which the Chargers struggled with a lot last year. And he has a ton of range, gets to the second level really well. He anchors really well in pass protection too. He's got active feet and run blocking. He can be a bit over aggressive at times, just like Cade Stover, and lunge a bit too much into defenders. But he's a freaking athlete, man. Elite explosiveness and elite agility, which shows up on tape, and great speed. He's a bit undersized, 300 pounds. It's crazy to say that's undersized, by the way. But Joe Hortiz, he has no problem drafting undersized centers with elite physical tools, because Tyler Linderbaum actually is a pretty good comparison for Beaux Limmer. Ravens drafted him in the first round. He's going to need to develop, though. This is a day 3 pick, and you pick guys with tools for your coaches to develop. In the 5th round, Marist Liufau. This is a 6'2", 230-pound linebacker from Notre Dame. The director actually brought him up in the mock draft video we did on his channel. He put me onto him. I think this is a smart, high motor player that can play the run well at times, although he is inconsistent with like all of his game, but specifically with decision making and instincts. His coverage ability is pretty good as well, because he has some pretty good discipline when it comes to zone coverage. He also can blitz. I mean, he had 5 sacks last year. Notre Dame even put him at outside linebacker a little bit, but he was blitzing the A-gap a ton. He's not the best athlete, and he needs time to develop, but I think this would be another Harbaugh pick because he's very physical and aggressive. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Takeo Spikes. He just needs to be coached up, and he's going to come in and contribute right away on special teams. In the 6th round, I went with Frank Crum. This is a huge offensive tackle from Wyoming. He has really quick feet, and he can get to the second level easily. Can wash away defenders in the run game, pancakes guys at times, but he tends to lunge a bit too much and plays with bad leverage because he is so tall. He doesn't have great power or hand usage, gets taken advantage of by defenders that have a good grasp of the fundamentals of pass rushing, but he does have a great blend of size and athleticism, and that is what the Chargers are looking for on day 3. He's not going to come in and try to take Trey Pipkins' job, even though Trey Pipkins, he's like an average right tackle, right? But this is a guy who is kind of similar to Trey Pipkins when he was coming out of college. If we compare their RAS scores, which grades their total athleticism, you can see they have pretty similar numbers, but Frank Crum graded in the 98th percentile for athleticism among all offensive tackles. He has a crazy high ceiling if he can be coached up by the Chargers coaching staff that has been preaching developing talent. He is 6'8", 313 pounds, had the 20th best athleticism grade given to an offensive tackle since 1987. This could be a great project for Chargers offensive line coach Mike Devlin and Jim Harbaugh. Trey Pipkins, he's going to start next year, I think. But what happens the year after that? I mean, right now, Trey Pipkins is the 2nd highest paid player on the Chargers offense. If you can get Frank Crum to develop, you can do whatever you want with Trey Pipkins. With my first pick in the 7th round, Frank Gore Jr. You guys know I love this guy. He was in my sleeper video. He runs just like his father. Great contact balance, really good patience, allows lanes to open up in front of him. He's a downhill runner, not afraid of contact, and he's going to keep his legs churning for extra yardage. He is shifty. He's elusive in open space, and he has a nice juke move that made guys miss in the open field consistently. He had 67 missed tackles forced, 824 yards after contact this last year, which both ranked 3rd in all of college football. He was also the 11th best in rushing and offensive grade by PFF. He played in an offense that didn't have a great quarterback, and they had multiple guys back there throwing the ball, so he was really like the only weapon that they had with an offensive line that wasn't great, but he was still extremely productive. And he found yards that not many running backs would find in tiny creases of the offensive line. And since he's only 5'8", he can put his head down and fit through them. He can also catch the ball out of the backfield, and he can pass protect. So he's an all-around 3-down running back that can be had on day 3. He's going to fall on people's boards because he's not the best athlete. He's not very fast. Can't really truck defenders because he's not that big either. But this is just a good football player that I want on my team. And if it costs me a 7th round pick, then to me, a 3-down running back in the 7th round, That's a bargain. Now, my last pick, Josh Wallace, the cornerback from Michigan, 5'11", 185 pounds. He was a rotational player in the defensive back room at Michigan, and he was a 4-year starter at the University of Massachusetts before transferring to Michigan this past season. He's a physical cornerback that can play on the boundary, but you'd like to add like 10 pounds onto him so that he can hold up better in the run game. And with bigger wide receivers, think like freaking DK Metcalf, he can play the run very well, and he is also a pretty good tackler. Only 2 missed tackles last year, and his tackle grade was 85.6, while his run defense grade was 87.8. And that doesn't mean that he's not a good coverage corner and he's just a physical corner, because his coverage grade was actually 84.9 last year, even though he only had 3 pass breakups and no interceptions. He had a breakout year at Michigan, and I think you bring him back into the same system with Jesse Minter, the same coaches with Steve Clinkscale and Jim Harbaugh, and you develop him in the NFL with the same strength staff and Ben Herbert. I think this could be a project that could really pay dividends. He had that 1 year at Michigan, broke out really well, and then you bring him into the NFL in the 7th round. Maybe he continues to have that breakout success. So that is a full 7-round mock draft of a combination of what I think and what I want to happen. If you didn't see my video on Friday, here's what Joe Hortiz had to say about the draft.